You have to play the role of very wealthy sex tourists. And so we had the whole operation set up, and it went beautifully. We got the girls immediately to the area where we were assured that they would get the support they need.
We were so excited. We were excited that these girls were finally going to have hope and healing. It was just a couple days after that I received the phone call. The traffickers were being released, and that all the girls were released.
They get released. They get freed. They pay money to the right people, to the judges.
Half the girls had family members that showed up, and the other half had traffickers that showed up for them.
That's a clip from an underground rescue operation trying to stop one of the world's fastest growing crimes. Today, we're breaking the silence on sex trafficking in America. The impact sex trafficking has had in our communities is detrimental, it's long-lasting. The victims are too often overlooked. Katie is joining me. She's a survivor who wanted to be here today to share her story. She's asked us to keep her full name and where you live anonymous. But I had expected you to be behind a curtain, in a shadow, which is how most women who've been sex trafficked prefer to be seen. But you actually insisted on showing your face. Why?
For so long, I was in the darkness and in the evils of sex trafficking, and felt so much shame. And I choose to not be afraid anymore, and I want people to see that recovery is possible. I want them to see my face.
You're a brave soul.
Thank you.
Good to see. So I want to understand what happened. You've agreed to talk about it, which I honor you for. Take me back to the beginning. How did this all start?
Well, I think it was a lifelong kind of setup of low self-esteem, a lot of childhood trauma. I was in a domestic violence relationship for 10 years, which left me very vulnerable. And in that is when I began to become coerced and recruited, which is what it is called in the life.
You were stuck in that life. What was your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is that I would die and my children wouldn't have a mom.
How many children did you have?
2.
Could you explain a typical day and why it was so difficult to escape, to get out?
Yeah, so every day was different. Some days, especially towards the end, I worked all day and all night. I didn't take breaks to eat or sleep or anything like that. And I needed drugs to be able to do what I was doing.
After you endured the abuse and you're doing the drugs to get through the day, how did you finally break the cycle? How did you get up the courage to escape?
So the time that stands out to me is that I was in a hotel room, and it came to me that my pain was not the only pain, that my family was in pain, my children were in pain, they didn't have their mother, and there was an inspiration that I felt from a spirit, and I put my drugs away, and I told my trafficker that I was not a prostitute and that no man would touch my body for any amount of money, including him. And yeah.
Weren't you worried he'd beat you or assail you as he had in the past?
At that point, he was pretty done with me running away from him and being non-compliant, that I think he was at the point of trading me off to what he called a companion, which would be another trafficker. I was able to make it to a hospital, and at the hospital, I was a liability to die, so no detox centers or shelters or anything like that would take me, because I was so close to death. And a lot of people from church showed up, and they took me to their home, and they took me home to die. They didn't think I was gonna make it through the night. but they were brave enough to lay next to me in bed, so I wouldn't be alone. And I remember floating out of my body that night and coming back in and hearing a distinct voice that I wasn't done yet. And ever since then, I have not stopped fighting for my recovery, my healing, for other survivors, for doing things like this.
What are you going to tell those beautiful children of yours about this episode in your life? About how you beat all the odds?
I believe that my children chose the perfect mom for them. And I'm going to tell them what I tell them every day. Know your worth and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
JD, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for visiting. I believe when we share our stories, we share our power, and we can all learn and heal together. God bless you for sharing yours, and doing it public and being proud of who you are. We need to unite as a community to uncover, dismantle, and disrupt trafficking. It ain't going to happen without you. So this is your wake-up call. If you suspect someone is trafficking or they're a trafficking victim, because now that you know, look, you'll see them. There are KBs walking out in the streets. They're in hotels. They're being pushed around. Pay attention to it. You want to contact human trafficking hotlines. I'll give you the number at the bottom, 888-373-7888. Come join one of these communities. Get going. Let's make the difference happen. Be right back.